Let's bring in now former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired four-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He's Chief International Analyst for NBC News. And President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, is author of the weekly newsletter, Home and Away, available on Substack. Also with us, former aide to the George W. Bush White House and State Department, Elise Jordan, and former chairman of the Republican National Committee and co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend, Michael Steele, and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of the Washington Post, Eugene Robinson, is with us this morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning.
Admiral Stavridis, what's your best read on what happened last night and what's been happening over the last 12 to 24 hours?
I think it was indeed a muted strike, a limited strike. Clearly, Israel, as we talked about earlier in the week, Joe, had a basket of options here. They could have gone big. There were certainly voices in Israel calling for that. They could have simply left it as cyber, non-kinetic kind of operation. They chose, as you and I talked about a few days ago, kind of in the middle. And I think what they sought to do and they accomplished was to show that they can penetrate Iranian air defenses. We'll know a bit more here over the next 24, 48 hours as battle damage assessments come out. But I, for one, believe that we're now in a 90% probability that this will settle down, go back into the shadows, follow a path of de-escalation. I think there's still a 10% chance it could flare up in a bigger way. And I'll close by giving you a couple indicators to watch over the next few days. Richard Engel mentioned one of them, which are the public statements coming out from Tehran and Jerusalem. Those are reassuring at the moment. Number two is activity from Hezbollah to the north. Are they going to ramp up, be unleashed by Tehran? They've got 100,000 plus missiles. That's the threat I think our Israeli friends are watching for this morning. And then third and finally, you know, the admiral's going to say it, watch what happens at sea. If Iran really wants to retaliate and go largely back against Jerusalem, they could do it at sea against Israeli shipping, or they could close the Strait of Hormuz. Final thought, those are small probabilities at this point. I think we're probably in a position to see things settle down. Let's hope so.
And you know, Mika, Iran has been careful not to escalate too much in this situation. Also, people throughout the region that I spoke to after the Soleimani assassination said Iran was very quick to launch some missiles to send a message to their people, but just as quick to call intermediaries and say, tell the United States that's it.
Right.
We're not doing anything else. We just needed to do that. This is, you have in both the case of Israel, as was just said, and in the case of Iran, two countries that have enough on their hands right now. They do not want to get into a regional war with each other.
And so that's the question, Admiral. Do you feel that, you know, as Richard pointed out, Israel has its hands full and it has its friends in the U.S. and also in the region who have really come to Israel's defense in recent weeks? Do you think that they did just enough to send a message, but not enough to look like they're not responding to the urging of friends in the region and by the U.S. to not make this worse and not to have it escalate into a wider war?
Yes, I do. And in particular, you're right to put your finger on the coalition aspect of this. That's what knocked down 350 drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles. That was an all hands on deck effort, including U.S., U.K., Britain, Jordan, as we've said, I think quietly. Saudis were cooperating, providing some intelligence, shall we say. This was a wonderful example of coming together, in this case, to defend Israel. The Israelis don't want to knock that off course. And then second and final point, now the attention kind of shifts to Capitol Hill, to look at the aid package for Israel. As Israel shot down 350, they probably used up close to 1,000 interceptors to do that. They need to replenish those stocks. That's in the aid bill. I'm hoping to see that get done this weekend alongside the, as critical, certainly, aid bill for Ukraine.
Anymore. I do have a question for Admiral Stavridis, though. When we look to, okay, so we had the Israeli response last night to Iran. Proportionality, of course, is in the eye of the beholder. I have, an Iranian American friend who has relatives in Isfahan. She's really wondering how proportional this was, but nonetheless, in the larger scheme, obviously Israel could have done more there and could have wreaked more damage. But let's look to the other side of that small country now, and there's still the question of Rafah. And what do you think is going to happen in the next weeks about Rafah? Do you think the Israelis are indeed going to invade, or do you think not?
I would say that the unblinking eye of the media will shift back pretty quickly as events hopefully settle down in terms of interstate warfare between Israel and Iran. So, Eugene, you're right to put your focus in particular on Rafah. I think the thing to watch here is the network of tunnels underneath all of Gaza, about 400 miles of tunnels. This is where Hamas trains, equips, organizes, directs, launches attacks. Israel knows those tunnels are the military center of gravity here. So they're going to work their way through that tunnel complex. They're already doing it in the northern part of Gaza. They are going to get after those tunnel systems, incredibly complex, under the area in the south, under and around Rafah. The problem for them, quite obviously, 1.1 million Gazans displaced into that area. So the Israeli military will need to come up with a reasonable plan to move as many of that civilian population as can be moved out of the area of the objective. They will, to answer directly the question, will they attack Rafah? I think eventually they will. They're going to have to go after the tunnel complex and probably 8,000-ish Hamas fighters who are still extant there. To do that effectively and in compliance with the laws of war, they've got to move 1 million people. I can't think of a harder military problem.